Welcome to our Creeping Dots with GSAP lesson. Today we're going to make these dots move across the screen in this creep-like fashion, and when they get off screen, we'll detect it and change the background color. We'll add one more tween to the animation and we'll get these really cool jumping and creeping dots. And to wrap up, I'll show you how to apply this effect to text and have it come in from totally off screen on the left and then move all the way across the screen on the right, and of course again, detect when it gets fully off screen. Let's get going. Alright, our starter file here is fairly straightforward. We have a wrapper element that has a number of dots that you see here on the screen. Our CSS, again, I like to keep it simple. We have some basic body styling. We have a wrapper element that has a 100 viewport height units height to take up the full screen here with some flexbox centering top to bottom. And then our dots are just this size and this bright pink color, okay? In our JavaScript, we have some very basic code already. All right, I just have a timeline that has one tween in it, okay? We're telling all the dots that they're gonna move to an X of 150. They're not using an ease now, and they're gonna have a stagger of 0.03, and they're going to start from the end, okay? So this is important. This means that the circle on the right is going to be the first one to animate, and the next one's going to start animating 0.03 seconds later. So let's just give this a run as is. And I want to point out, of course, the easing is none. And we have this really sort of kind of boring, lifeless animation, all right? Each dot moves to the right 150 pixels with no easing. To spice things up, I'm going to add a power 1 dot in out ease. Now what that's going to do is have each dot sort of start slow, speed up, and then slow down. And that gives us this really nice kind of elastic effect, if you will, all right? It's almost like you're kind of pulling on a rubber band, all right? The way the easings work with the offset start times. I love this look a lot. Now to make these dots all go across the screen, there's a few things I need to do. The first thing I'm going to do is, instead of using an absolute value of 150, I'm going to do plus equals 150, which is a relative value, which means that each dot will move 150 pixels along the x-axis from where it is. Now, the visual effect here is going to be exactly the same because all these dots have a natural x transform of 0, so 150 from where they are is actually 150. But where this is going to become really cool is that I'm going to tell this timeline here that it's going to repeat a bunch of times. Right now I'm just going to say 10, and now when I run, guess what? We're going to see exactly the same thing. Now you said, hey Carl, this is a relative value. How come after each time the timeline repeats, we don't go 150 more from where we currently are? Well, in this tween right here, the start and end values are being recorded, and when you repeat, it's just going to redo that animation from 0 to 150 for each one. If I set something called repeat refresh to true, this means that this tween and the start values are going to be invalidated on repeat. And now check it out. This is going to be the behavior that we want. Each time the stagger repeats, we're going 150 more pixels to the right, all right? Look at how little code we're using, and look at this awesome effect. I'm just going to rerun it one more time because I absolutely love it. We have these dots just creeping across the screen. Now, I could say we're done right now, but I want to make sure the animation stops when the dots go off screen. So to do that, what I'm basically going to do, let me just run as I talk through this, is I want to be checking when the last dot here gets to the end of the screen, all right? So I'm going to use a little bit of JavaScript every time this timeline repeats to see if that first dot in the row has an X greater than the width of the screen, all right? So first I'm going to do is a little bit of a CSS test for us. I'm going to paste in some CSS code here so you don't watch me typing it, which basically says that we're going to get the first dot and set its background to white. All right, so I just want to verify that this CSS selector is working, and that's great. All right, because we're going to use this same CSS selector in our code that checks whether or not that dot is on screen or not. So let's fly on over to our JavaScript code, and in my timeline here, I'm going to put an on repeat callback, and I'm going to say, let's call a function called check distance. And here's another case where it'll be a lot easier for me to paste and talk through the code than for you to watch me type it all out, all right? So the check distance function is going to run a conditional check on every repeat, and it's going to say if gsap.getProperty of this element here, that's the CSS selector that we just created, if that x value is greater than the window's inner width, then we're going to just quickly set the body's background to sky blue and pause the timeline, all right? So I'm putting this background color change in here just so that we know when exactly this happens, okay? So if we know that the background color changes color, we can be pretty sure that the timeline is going to pause. Before I test this, I am going to set the repeats of my timeline to be infinite at -1. So that means it's going to repeat infinitely until this check distance function fires and figures out that we should pause. So fingers crossed, let's give this a run, and we should see all of our dots creeping across the screen. Oh, it's so cute. And if we just watch that white one, oh, I love it. How awesome is that, all right? So since this is being checked on every repeat, and we're always testing against the current window.innerWidth, this should hold up to some sort of responsive checks, okay? So let me just do a quick save of this, and I'm going to change my view so that we have our code on the right. And let me just run. And we're gonna start off with our gray background. Let me squish the window. Boom, there we go. I love it, all right? Let's do it one more time. And this time, while it's running, I'm gonna make the window much wider, and hopefully it should be creeping until there, all right? So it's not gonna change the second that the dot crosses the screen. It's going to change as soon as the timeline goes to repeat, okay? So there we have it. We have this really cool sort of responsive creeping dots effect, all right? I just kind of think it's cool and neat, and we just tap into just a few different features of GSAP to get it all working. One little thing I'm going to add to this before we get into the text versions is I'm going to add another tween, all right? And again, you know what? I'm going to save your time and mine with a little bit of a copy and paste action, all right? I'm going to use the same timeline. I'm going to target every dot, but I'm going to add a Y tween that goes to -60, all right? So that means the dots are going to go up. Now, what's important here is that the duration is going to be 0.25. We should know that the default duration used on these tweens here is 0.5 seconds. So what we're doing is we're going to move up to -60 for 0.5 seconds, but we're going to use a repeat in the stagger object and a yo-yo true so that those dots come back down, okay? We've talked about the stagger object and putting repeats in there in previous lessons. And what's ultra important is this 0 here as the position parameter, putting this tween and this tween at the same start time. So hold on to your horses. Let me stretch the window out. Oh, there those guys are. And let's do a quick rerun. And now you're going to see that we have our jumping motion, okay? Again, I just love the fact that we added one additional tween to this timeline using GSAP basics, and we get this really cool effect. Before I go, I just want to show you the same effect using text, all right? So not much different. Ooh, also the background turned blue with this one, but in my HTML, I'm using a heading 1 instead of a bunch of dots, as you could probably tell, all right? The CSS isn't going to be much different. In the JavaScript, though, I do want to point out that I'm creating a new split text element out of that heading 1. Our timeline is set up. We got the repeat refresh, the repeat, and the check distance. And here it's just using the text object and the characters array, moving them all 150 pixels over to the right. For the check distance, things are just slightly different because here we're getting the first div inside the heading 1. Remember, split text is going to take all those characters and wrap them in divs. And again, we're just checking to see whether or not that first character's X property is greater than the window's inner width, all right? So basically everything's the same, just using split text. And if we want to make it jumping text, we can just uncomment this line that does the same jump on the Y as we did with our dots, all right? So now the next time I run, my creeping text should be jumping text, all right? So again, it's just a fun little effect that you can use in a variety of ways. Bonus time, let's have the text come in from off screen on the left. So here in the demo, I made some alterations and I've added a border to my heading 1 element. You'll also notice that it has display inline block, which makes the width just the width of the text. So when I reload real quick, you're going to see that all the text does in fact fit inside that red box until we do those transforms on each individual character, moving it off screen. So the trick here is I want to take this box heading 1 here of text and move it off screen based on its width, okay? Now with JavaScript and GSAP, that's really quite straightforward. I can just do a gsap.set and tell the heading 1 that we're going to change its X% to -100, all right? So that's going to offset it by its width. So now when I run, you should see that those characters are going to come in from off screen, and it starts immediately, okay? We've offset them by their width, but now we're ending a little bit too soon, okay? So since we've moved them over to the left, let's just say it's 300 pixels, we need to, when we check to see off screen, we need to add that width to our check of the browser's window width. So that's going to take a little bit more work. And what I'm going to do real quick is just pop a doozy in here, a new variable, and we're going to call it text width. And it's going to be equal to document.querySelector h1, and we're going to get the client width. Let's get that all on one line. And once we have that value, what we're going to do is add it in our conditional check down here, all right? So we're going to see if the X value is greater than the window's inner width plus that text width offset, all right? So let's just say it's 200. I don't even know how wide it is. It doesn't matter. Well, let's give this a run. And even though the browser window is fairly narrow here, the logic should hold up, all right? So let's just creep off screen. And now the next, oh, I love it. How good is that? Let's do a quick save. And for the final test, let's change the view so that we have a really wide browser window. And let's run. And it should start immediately coming in off screen from the left. It's going to be bouncing and creeping. And let's just see if it can turn off when it gets to the edge. If it does, I'm going to say good day. Now I know I may have went a little quick through relative values, repeat refresh, and get property, but the reason for that is that we've already covered these things in previous videos, such as bug race game in a single tween, all right? Obviously I have a video there, but if you recall, or maybe you're new, this fun little game here has these little bugs racing across the screen, and they move at random intervals, and boom, we detect which one wins, all right? So if we just jump over to the code real quick for this, we're gonna see things like this tween uses a relative random value. The tween has repeat refresh true so that we get a new random value on each repeat. And we're also using where are you get property to find the X of each bug to see if it's crossed the finished position or the finished line, okay? So if you need refreshers on these basics, it's all there for you. Let me scroll through all of these lessons. Where are you in Beyond the Basics? Oh, I think I just passed it. And then we have bug race with jerk level and weighted random values. So the idea here is that some of the bugs will turn around occasionally and go the other way. That's what jerk level is, all right? Whoa, I thought he was gonna win. There we have pink, takes it for the win. So if you ever need to decide something randomly, I use this game to figure out which one of my kids needed to brush their teeth first each night. And here, blue just takes it for the win. So play around with this stuff, have fun with it, and I promise you there's something in each of these lessons that you can apply someday to a real world or silly project. Do you want to gain mastery of the GreenSock animation platform through more videos like this? I'll show you all the tips and tricks I've learned over a decade of using GSAP, working at GreenSock, and teaching it to thousands of developers like you. My training is guaranteed to save you hours of frustration as you learn to add ultra-slick animations to all your web projects. Visit creativecodingclub.com today to unlock the world's most comprehensive GreenSock training, and let me help you discover the joy of animating with code.